I never thought I'd be that person who finds hidden cameras in their Airbnb, but here I am. My weekend getaway to Seattle was supposed to be a mental reset, just me, my laptop, and the rainy city views from a cozy downtown loft. The first red flag appeared during check-in. The host, Marcus, insisted on giving me an orientation despite my preference for self-check-in. He spent 20 minutes explaining every little detail about the apartment, lingering especially long in the bedroom and bathroom areas. Something about his meticulousness made my skin crawl, but I brushed it off as someone being overly thorough with their property. That night, while unpacking, I noticed a USB wall charger in the bathroom that seemed oddly positioned, facing directly at the shower. I'd read enough horror stories to know better, so I grabbed it and examined it closely. My heart dropped when I discovered a tiny camera lens cleverly disguised within the charging port. My hands trembling, I started searching the entire apartment. Behind the TV, there was another camera. Inside the smoke detector above the bed, a third one. Each discovery sent waves of nausea through my body. How many times had I changed clothes, thinking I was alone? How many other guests had been violated without their knowledge? I wanted to confront Marcus immediately, but fear kept me frozen. What if he was watching right now? What if he knew I'd found them? The thought of him potentially monitoring my every move made me feel like a trapped animal. I needed to act normal while figuring out my next move. Using my phone's hotspot instead of his Wi-Fi, I documented everything and contacted Airbnb support. They advised me to leave immediately, but there was one problem. It was 2 a.m. and all my belongings were scattered around the apartment. As I quietly packed my bags, the smart TV suddenly turned on by itself, blaring at full volume. That's when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. The footsteps grew louder, each creak of the wooden stairs sending ice through my veins. I grabbed my phone and darted into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Through the thin walls, I heard a key turning in the front door's lock. My throat tightened as I realized Marcus must have a spare key. Of course he did. It was his property. "Is everything okay in there?" His voice carried that same meticulousness from earlier, but now it dripped with something darker. I noticed the TV was acting up on my security feed. "Thought I'd check on you." Security feed? He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I pressed myself against the bathroom wall, mind racing through options. The window was too small to climb through, and I was 4 stories up anyway. My phone showed only 2 bars of signal. Enough to text, but would police arrive in time? The footsteps moved closer to the bathroom. "Look, I know you found them," Marcus said, his voice now right outside the door. "But you don't understand. I have to protect my investment. You'd be amazed at what some guests do to these places." The doorknob rattled. "Just come out so we can talk about this rationally." That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The USB charger I'd pulled from the wall. Its light was still blinking. It wasn't just a camera. It was streaming live. And based on the voices and shuffling I now heard in the living room, Marcus wasn't alone. My trembling fingers opened my phone's camera app. If something happened to me tonight, there needed to be evidence. The shuffling outside grew louder. I could make out at least 3 distinct voices now, all male. They were discussing something in hushed tones, occasionally punctuated by the metallic sound of something being dragged across the floor. "Final chance," Marcus called through the door. "We can handle this professionally, or—" He left the threat hanging. I started recording, holding my phone close to my chest. That's when I saw it. A thin stream of vapor curling up from under the door. My eyes started burning almost immediately. Some kind of gas. They were trying to smoke me out. The realization hit me with horrifying clarity. These weren't just creeps with cameras. This was organized, professional. How many other guests had they trapped this way? Fighting the urge to cough, I turned on the shower full blast and stuffed towels under the door. The bathroom started filling with steam, but it wasn't enough to counter whatever they were pumping in. My vision blurred. The room started spinning. Through the haze, I noticed something I'd missed before. Behind the bathroom mirror, there was a slight gap. Not just a gap, but a scene. With my remaining strength, I pried at the mirror's edge. It popped open, revealing a maintenance shaft, probably connecting to other units. Old buildings like this were full of them. The voices outside grew agitated as the shower continued running. They thought they had me cornered, but they didn't know about this. They couldn't know about this. As my consciousness started fading, I squeezed myself into the narrow passage. The last thing I heard before pulling the mirror shut behind me was the bathroom door flying open, followed by Marcus's enraged scream. The maintenance shaft was barely wide enough for me to shimmy through. Every movement echoed, and I feared they'd hear me through the walls. My phone's flashlight revealed decades of dust and cobwebs. Clearly, this passage hadn't been used in years. At least, I hoped it hadn't. I could hear them ransacking the apartment above, their footsteps now muffled but directly overhead. They knew I'd escaped somehow, but they didn't know where. Not yet. After what felt like hours of navigating the cramped space, I found another mirror panel. Through the glass, I could make out a different bathroom, identical to the one I'd fled. Taking a chance, I pushed gently. The mirror swung open into an empty unit. The air here was stale. This apartment wasn't currently rented. I scrambled out, my legs nearly giving way as I reached the front door. It was locked, but the emergency fire escape through the window would have to do. That's when my phone buzzed, a notification from the Airbnb app. "How's your stay going? Marcus has sent you a message." I opened it with shaking fingers. "Clever girl, but did you really think you were the first to find the maintenance shaft? Check your video uploads." My heart stopped. The camera app was still running, but instead of recording, it had been uploading the entire time to an unknown server. They had their own Wi-Fi network in the walls. Everything I'd just done, every move I'd made, they'd been watching through my own phone. I heard the apartment door unlock behind me. The police found the building empty 2 hours later. Every unit had been stripped clean. No cameras, no evidence, no Marcus. The ownership records were all shells leading nowhere. They'd told me similar reports had surfaced in 12 other cities, always with the same meticulous host, the same cameras, the same maintenance shaft. I still travel sometimes, but I'll never use Airbnb again, and every time I check into a hotel, I look behind the mirrors, because I know they're still out there, watching, waiting for their next guest. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear footsteps in the walls. My girlfriend Sarah always said I was too trusting. "You need to read the reviews more carefully," she warned when I booked the mountain cabin near Lake Tahoe. But the place was gorgeous, dirt cheap for a month-long stay, and I needed somewhere quiet to finish my novel. The only red flag was that the previous guest, Amanda Chen, had left mid-stay without explanation. The cabin exceeded my expectations: rustic charm, modern amenities, and complete solitude. The host, Diana, lived in the city and managed everything remotely. Perfect. For the first week, I settled into a productive routine. Wake up, write, watch the sunset from the deck. The words flowed easily here. Then the packages started arriving. Small ones at first, addressed to Amanda Chen. I messaged Diana, but she seemed confused. According to her records, Amanda had checked out months ago. I stacked the packages in the corner, planning to return them eventually. On day 9, I found something strange while looking for extra blankets in the hallway closet. A small notebook wedged behind the water heater. The first page had Amanda's name. Against my better judgment, I opened it. What I read made my skin crawl. Day 15. They're getting closer. The packages aren't mistakes. They know I'm here. Diana isn't who she claims to be. That night, 3 more packages arrived. Through the plastic wrapping, I could make out what looked like surveillance photos of me on the deck, writing, from angles that could only have been taken from inside the woods. I stayed up all night reading Amanda's journal. Her entries became increasingly frantic over her 2-week stay. She wrote about whispers in the walls, figures darting between trees at twilight, and Diana's inconsistent stories about the cabin's history. The final entry chilled me. If you're reading this, get out. The packages are how they mark their targets. My hand shaking, I opened the packages. Each contained identical photos, not just of me, but of Amanda too. Same angles, same deck, same writing pose. In some, you could see a shadow moving closer to her with each shot. The final photo showed her looking directly at the camera, her face frozen in terror. I called the local police. They were unhelpful, apparently. They'd done a wellness check when Amanda first disappeared. Found nothing suspicious. But the officer's tone changed when I mentioned Diana's name. That cabin's been abandoned for 2 years, he said. The real Diana Rochester died in 2021. The power cut out just as I ended the call. Through the window, I saw flashlights moving through the trees, forming a circle around the cabin. My phone showed one new message from Diana. Enjoying Amanda's journal? You're a much better writer than she was. My phone's flashlight revealed something else in Amanda's journal, a crude map drawn on the last page. It showed a tunnel system beneath the cabin, accessible through the root cellar. According to her notes, the original Diana had discovered something down there, something that had changed her. The flashlights outside grew closer. I had 2 choices: stay trapped in the cabin or try the cellar. The basement door creaked as I descended, my light catching cobwebs and rust-stained walls. The root cellar lock was already broken, recently. The tunnel entrance gaped like an open wound in the earth. Boot prints in the dust led both in and out, some fresh, others older. Among them were drag marks. As I followed them deeper, my light caught something metallic. Amanda's phone, cracked but still powered. Her final video was still open. The footage showed her running through these same tunnels, whispering frantically, "They're not human anymore. Diana, what they did to Diana." The video ended with her camera falling, capturing feet walking toward her. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. A scream echoed through the tunnel. Impossibly, it sounded like Amanda. Then another scream, in Diana's voice, but distorted. Wrong. They were coming from deeper below. And now the entrance behind me filled with flashlight beams. The tunnel split into 3 paths. Amanda's screams echoed from all directions, making it impossible to tell which way to run. I clicked through her phone's photos, hoping for a clue. The last image showed a half-collapsed chamber with strange markings on the walls, and there in the corner, a familiar package. I chose the middle tunnel. The air grew thicker, carrying a metallic smell like old pennies. My light caught more drag marks, then scattered papers. Diana's real estate listings from 2021. The final one showed this cabin's sale to a corporation with a strange symbol, the same symbol Amanda had photographed. The tunnel opened into the chamber from Amanda's photo, but now the walls moved, pulsed, and there stood Diana, or what was left of her. Her skin rippled like liquid mercury, face splitting into impossible angles. Behind her, suspended in silvery webs, hung dozens of cocoons. One was still moving. Amanda's changing. Diana's voice came from everywhere at once. Just like I changed, just like you'll change. The packages mark those who can survive the process. I ran. Somehow I found my way up, out, through the woods. I didn't stop until I reached the highway. The police found nothing, of course. The tunnel entrance had collapsed. Diana's body was never recovered. Amanda was just another missing person case. The cabin's still on Airbnb under a new host name. The reviews mention the great writing atmosphere, the solitude, the mysterious packages that sometimes arrive. And sometimes, late at night, I get notifications, photos of other guests sitting on that same deck, unaware of what waits below. I want to warn them, but who would believe me? After all, I'm not even sure I believe myself anymore. Not since I found that first silver scale on my arm. I had been looking forward to this trip for months. A solo retreat, just me, my laptop, and the quiet countryside. The Airbnb listing was perfect. A secluded cabin, cozy interior, and a view of the mountains that stretched endlessly. It was the kind of place where time slowed down, where I could finally breathe after the stress of the city. The owner, an older woman named Marla, had glowing reviews. Everyone mentioned how warm and accommodating she was, how she always made guests feel at home. I arrived just before sunset, the golden light spilling over the trees as I pulled into the gravel driveway. The cabin was even more charming in person. A rustic wooden structure with ivy creeping up the sides, a small port swing rocking slightly in the evening breeze. The front door was unlocked, and a note was taped to it. "Welcome. Make yourself at home. I'll check in on you tomorrow." I checked in on you tomorrow. I'll check in on you tomorrow. I was happy to be home. I'll check in on you tomorrow. I checked in on you tomorrow. I check in on you tomorrow. That was a bit unusual, but I appreciated the trust. Inside, the place smelled of cedar and something faintly floral. Everything was in place. A warm fireplace, shelves lined with old books, and a small kitchen with a freshly baked loaf of bread on the counter. I should have felt at ease, but something about the space unsettled me. It was subtle. The way the rocking chair near the window was slightly angled toward me, as if someone had been sitting there just moments before. As if the bedroom door left open just wide enough to suggest recent movement, the odd sensation that the cabin was aware of my presence. Brushing off the unease, I set my bags down and explored the rest of the house. The bedroom had a massive 4-poster bed. The bathroom was stocked with plush towels, and there was even a small office area with a vintage writing desk. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something felt off. That night, as I lay in bed, I swore I heard the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate. I held my breath, listening. Then came the creak of the wooden floorboards. Directly outside my window, I held my breath, heart pounding against my ribs. The footsteps stopped just outside my window. I wanted to believe it was an animal, maybe a stray dog or a deer passing through, but deep down, I knew better. Something about the pacing, the deliberate pauses, it was human. I forced myself to turn my head, just enough to catch a glimpse of the window, but the curtains were drawn. Minutes passed in suffocating silence. Then the doorknob rattled. Not violently, but as if someone was testing it, seeing if it would turn. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I reached for my phone, but in my panic I knocked it off the nightstand. The sound was deafening in the silence. I froze. The rattling stopped. I waited. Every muscle of my body tensed. A full minute passed, then 2. Slowly, I forced myself to inch out of bed and retrieve my phone, my hands shaking so hard I could barely grip it. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it toward the window. Nothing. No shadow, no movement, just the reflection of my own pale face staring back at me. I didn't sleep much after that. I stayed in bed, my ears straining for any noise. When morning finally arrived, I convinced myself that exhaustion had played tricks on me. Maybe the door had expanded from the cold. Maybe I had imagined the footsteps. But I wasn't willing to take chances. I decided to check the security of the cabin. The front door was still locked. The windows were all secure. Feeling slightly reassured, I stepped outside to get some fresh air. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Clear, distinct footprints in the dirt leading up to my bedroom window. And then, nothing. No retreating steps, no indication that someone had left. As if whoever had stood there had simply vanished. My stomach twisted. Maybe Marla had come by early, but why wouldn't she have knocked? I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. I wanted answers. I needed to find her. I wasted no time. Grabbing my jacket, I marched toward the main house where Marla supposedly lived. It wasn't far, just a short walk down the winding path through the trees. The morning air was crisp, but a heavy unease clung to me like a warning I couldn't ignore. The house was older than I expected, its paint peeling, the shutters barely hanging on. Something about it felt abandoned. I hesitated before knocking on the warped wooden door. The sound echoed, too loud in the silence. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. I stepped back, ready to leave, when the door creaked open on its own. The smell hit me first. Damp wood, mildew, and something sickly sweet like rotting fruit. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, but my need for answers overpowered my fear. I stepped inside. The living room was filled with outdated furniture covered in dust. A grandfather clock in the corner had stopped at 3:12. The kitchen had dishes still in the sink, but the water had long since evaporated, leaving a thin layer of grime. I called out for Marla, my voice barely above a whisper, and then I saw it. The framed newspaper clippings on the wall. My blood ran cold. Local woman, Airbnb host, missing for over a year. Authorities search for clues in disappearance of Marla Dawson. I stumbled back, my breath coming in short gasps. That wasn't possible. I had just exchanged messages with her. She had left a note for me, hadn't she? My pulse hammered as I noticed something else, a row of Polaroid photos pinned to a corkboard. My stomach lurched. Every guest who had ever stayed in the cabin. And the last photo? It was of me, taken last night. My body turned ice cold. Someone had been inside the cabin. Someone had stood over me as I slept. A floorboard creaked behind me. I didn't think. I ran. Bolting toward the door, my feet barely touched the ground as I sprinted through the overgrown yard. The trees blurred past me, my only focus on getting back to my car. My lungs burned, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Halfway to the cabin, I heard it. Footsteps. Not hurried, not frantic. Just a slow, measured pace. Like someone following, but in no rush to catch me. I burst into the cabin, slamming the door shut behind me. My hands shook as I twisted the lock. My eyes darted around for something, anything I could use to defend myself. My suitcase was still open by the bed, my phone on the nightstand. I grabbed it, fingers fumbling as I pulled up the dial pad. No signal. My stomach dropped. A shadow passed by the window. I backed away, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The front doorknob rattled, slowly, steadily, then silence. I edged toward the window, peeking through the curtain. Nothing. The porch was empty. The woods were still. Had I imagined it? Was my mind playing tricks on me? Then a whisper, close, right behind me. You shouldn't have come here. I turned too fast, stumbling over my own feet. My head struck the edge of the coffee table, and darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, I was in my car. The engine was running, headlights cutting through the early morning fog. My hands were gripping the wheel so tightly, my knuckles were white. My heart pounded like a war drum. I didn't remember getting here. I didn't remember running. But I didn't wait to question it. I floored the gas, tires spitting gravel as I sped down the dirt road. I didn't stop until I hit the highway, the cabin nothing more than a nightmare in my rearview mirror. Later, when I finally got service, I checked my phone. There was only one message. We hope you enjoyed your stay. Come back soon. I never looked back. I never told anyone. But sometimes late at night, I still hear it. The whisper, and I know someone, something is still